3:47 p.m., March 23, 1945, General Werner Schmidt stood in his command bunker, a mere 12 miles east of the Rhine River, and watched through high-powered Zeiss binoculars as American P-47 Thunderbolts, the Jugs, rained down 150-gallon napalm tanks on his beleaguered 7th Panzer Division. The jellied gasoline ignited in a horrifying instant, exploding at a searing 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. 53 German tanks simply melted. Schmidt slowly lowered his binoculars. His hands were visibly shaking. At 4:02 p.m., he radioed Berlin, uttering 3 words that effectively ended his 31-year military career. "I resign command." Within 48 hours, 4 more Wehrmacht generals would reach the same devastating conclusion, not out of cowardice, but from the cold, hard, mathematical realization that American industrial and technological superiority had rendered traditional warfare obsolete. This is the story classified for 70 long years, the story of how American air power didn't merely defeat Germany. It crushed the will of men who had never known fear. General Werner Schmidt was not a Nazi. He was a Prussian military professional, a graduate of the prestigious War College in 1914. He served in the Kaiser's army during World War I and joined the Reichswehr in 1920 when the Weimar Republic restricted Germany to a paltry 100,000 soldiers. Schmidt rose through sheer merit, not through party connections. By 1939, he commanded a panzer division. By 1941, he was leading an entire panzer corps on the Eastern Front. Schmidt had seen Stalingrad. He had survived the Kursk disaster. He had witnessed the collapse of Army Group Center in 1944. Nothing had broken him, not the brutal Russian winter, not Soviet T-34 tanks, not even partisan attacks that claimed the life of his adjutant. Schmidt was a soldier. And soldiers endure. But March 23, 1945 was different. March 23, 1945 showed him something his War College training could never prepare him for: American industrial warfare at its most terrifying. The P-47 Thunderbolt, the Jug, was not the fastest American fighter. That honor belonged to the P-51 Mustang. It was not the longest ranged. Again, the P-51 took that title. It wasn't even the most elegant. The P-38 Lightning held that distinction. But the P-47 Thunderbolt, the Jug, was the most feared. By March of 1945, German soldiers had a name for it: Jabo Schreck, fighter bomber terror. The P-47 could carry a staggering 2,500 pounds of bombs, plus 8 50-caliber machine guns, capable of firing a combined 3,400 rounds per minute. And, starting in late 1944, something new, something horrific: napalm. 150-gallon tanks filled with jellied gasoline, a nightmare mixture of naphthenic and palmitic acids. The formula was developed by Harvard chemist Louis Fieser in 1942. The U.S. Chemical Warfare Service refined it, transforming it into a weapon of unparalleled destruction. By 1944, Republic aviation engineers had ingeniously designed wing mounts that could carry 2 150-gallon napalm tanks under each P-47. The tanks dropped like conventional bombs, but when they hit, they erupted into liquid fire that burned at temperatures exceeding a mind-boggling 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt steel, hot enough to consume oxygen in a 200-foot radius, hot enough to turn German Panther and Tiger tanks into crematoriums. Schmidt had read the intelligence reports about napalm. Everyone in the Wehrmacht High Command had. But reading a report and witnessing the weapon firsthand are 2 entirely different experiences. At 2:15 p.m. on March 23rd, 1945. Schmidt received orders from Berlin. The U.S. Ninth Army, under General William Simpson, was crossing the Rhine at Wesel. Schmidt's 7th Panzer Division, the last operational armored unit in Army Group B, was ordered to counterattack immediately, destroy the bridgehead, throw the Americans back across the Rhine. Schmidt knew it was suicide. His division had a mere 89 operational tanks. The Americans had crossed with 3,000 tanks and 12,000 vehicles. But orders are orders. At 2:47 p.m., Schmidt's panzers began their fateful move toward Wesel. By 3:15 p.m., American forward observers had spotted them. By 3:23 p.m., P-47 Thunderbolts of the 362nd Fighter Group were wheels up from their forward airfield at Aachen, and by 3:47 p.m., the sky belonged to America. Schmidt watched it unfold. 12 P-47 Thunderbolts appeared at 8,000 feet. They circled once, then they dove. The lead, P-47, piloted by Captain Robert Hughes from Detroit, Michigan, released his 250-gallon napalm tanks at 1,200 feet. The tanks tumbled end over end. They looked almost graceful. Then they hit the lead German tank column. The explosion was unlike any conventional bomb. There was no sharp crack. Instead, there was a whump that Schmidt felt in his chest from 12 miles away. A fireball, 300 feet wide, erupted. The jellied gasoline splashed over 7 Panther tanks and clung to their hulls. The crews tried to escape. Schmidt watched through his binoculars as men emerged from the hatches, covered in burning gel. They ran. The fire followed them. Napalm doesn't extinguish. It burns until there's nothing left to burn. In 90 seconds, 7 Panther tanks and their 35-man crews ceased to exist, but the P-47s weren't done. The second flight of 4 Thunderbolts dove. More napalm tanks fell, more liquid fire, then the third flight, then the fourth. By 3:52 p.m., the entire 7th Panzer Division vanguard was burning. Schmidt could see the fire from his bunker. Black smoke rose 4,000 feet into the air. The temperature on the ground near the napalm strikes reached 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, according to post-war U.S. Army analysis. That's hot enough to ignite trees 100 feet away. Hot enough to cook ammunition inside sealed storage bins. Hot enough to melt the aluminum engine blocks of vehicles that weren't even directly hit. Schmidt's chief of staff, Colonel Franz Dietrich, stood next to him. Dietrich had fought in North Africa. He had seen British artillery barrages at El Alamein. He turned to Schmidt and said quietly, "This is not war. This is industrial slaughter. We are not soldiers anymore. We are victims of American engineering." The P-47 Thunderbolts that attacked Schmidt's division were based at Aachen Airfield, just 47 miles from the Rhine crossing. They took 23 minutes to reach the target from wheels up. They spent 11 minutes over the target area. They dropped 48 napalm tanks, totaling 7,200 gallons of jellied fire. Then, they flew back to Aachen, landed, rearmed, refueled, and took off again. Total turnaround time 32 minutes. By 4:47 p.m., the same 12 P-47s were back over Schmidt's division for a second strike. This time, they used conventional 500-pound bombs and their 850 caliber machine guns. The machine guns were devastating. Each P-47 carried 3,400 rounds at a firing rate of 850 rounds per minute per gun. A single P-47 could deliver 48,000 rounds in a mere 6-second burst. The 50 caliber round can penetrate 1 inch of armor at 500 yards. German Panther tanks had 3.15 inches of side armor, Not enough. The P-47s strafed at oblique angles. Their bullets found weak points. Engine decks, track assemblies, ventilation grills. One P-47 pilot, Lieutenant James Morrison from Tulsa, Oklahoma, fired a burst into the engine deck of a Tiger tank. The bullets ignited hydraulic fluid. The fire spread to ammunition storage. The tank exploded so violently that its 56-ton turret flew 40 feet through the air. Schmidt watched it all. He had binoculars, he had maps, he had radio communication, he had everything except the ability to stop it. At 4:02 p.m., he made his decision. He walked to the radio room. He ordered his communications officer to send a message to Berlin, to the headquarters of OKW, Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, the Supreme Command. The message read, General Schmidt requests immediate relief from command of 7th Panzer Division. Recommend assignment to reserve status. I'm unable to lead men into combat against enemy possessing absolute air supremacy and incendiary weapons of this magnitude. Request is non-negotiable. The radio operator stared at him. Sir, this message will end your career? Schmidt nodded. Better my career than 4,000 lives. Send it. Berlin received the message at 4:18 p.m. Feldmarschall Wilhelm Keitel, chief of OKW, read it at 4:32 p.m. Keitel was furious. He immediately ordered Schmidt court-martialed for cowardice and defeatism. But then something unexpected happened. 4 more generals sent similar messages over the next 48 hours. General Lieutenant Heinrich Tauber, commanding 352nd Infantry Division near Remagen, resigned on March 24th. His message cited American air superiority with napalm weapons as, quote, impossible to counter with available resources, unquote. General Major Kurt Felber, commanding remnants of 9th Panzer Division, resigned March 25th. His message was even more direct. American industrial capacity has rendered conventional ground combat obsolete. Recommend immediate armistice negotiations. General Oberst Hans von Obstfelder, commanding the entire 1st Parachute Army, sent a resignation request on March 26th. And most shocking of all, General Feldmarschall Walter Model, commander of Army Group B, the entire defensive force west of the Rhine, asked to be relieved on March 27th. What was happening? How did American napalm strikes break the will of Germany's top military leaders? The answer is in the psychology of technological shock. Schmidt and these other generals were career military professionals. They understood sacrifice. They accepted tactical losses. They could order men to die for strategic objectives because they believed victory was mathematically possible. But napalm changed the mathematics. A single The Jug cost approximately $85,000 to manufacture at Republic Aviation's factories in Long Island and Indiana. It could carry 300 gallons of napalm, costing about $15 per gallon. Total weapon system cost per sortie, $85,000 for the aircraft amortized over 500 missions equals $170 per mission, plus $4,500 of napalm equals $4,670. That $4,670 destroyed an average of 3.2 German tanks per sortie according to U.S. 9th Air Force after-action reports from March 1945. Each German Panther tank cost 117,000 Reichsmarks to produce. At March 1945 exchange rates, that was approximately $47,000. So each The Jug napalm sortie destroyed an average of $150,000 worth of German armor at a cost of $4,670. That's a 32-to-1 economic advantage, but the psychological advantage was infinite. Schmidt understood this. He had studied military economics at War College. He knew that wars are won by production capacity as much as tactical brilliance. And in March 1945, American production capacity was overwhelming. Republic Aviation was producing 1/200 the jugs per month. The Chemical Warfare Service was producing napalm at a rate sufficient for 60,000 gallons per day. Schmidt's 7th Panzer Division had taken 11 months to assemble its 89 operational tanks. The Americans destroyed 53 of them in 18 minutes, and the Americans could do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day until Germany had no tanks left. This was the realization that broke Schmidt. Not fear, mathematics. But then, enemy intelligence discovered something that made the situation even worse. Schmidt didn't know it on March 23rd. But the jugs that attacked his division were carrying a new, improved napalm formula. Napalm B. The original napalm used aluminum soap to thicken gasoline. Napalm B used polystyrene. It burned hotter, at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. It stuck tighter to metal surfaces. And most terrifying of all, it burned longer. Original napalm burned for approximately 90 seconds. Napalm B burned for 7 to 10 minutes, long enough to completely melt through tank armor. The first use of Napalm B by the jugs was March 17, 1945, 6 days before Schmidt's division was hit. American intelligence didn't advertise the improvement, they just quietly upgraded the formula at production facilities. By March 23rd, approximately 40% of the jug napalm strikes were using the new formula. Schmidt's division was hit by the old formula. If it had been Napalm B, the destruction would have been worse. But the German High Command didn't know about Napalm B yet. They were about to find out. On March 28, 1945, elements of the U.S. Third Army under General George Patton attacked German positions near Frankfurt. Patton coordinated with 19 NATO Tactical Air Command. They sent 84 the jugs armed exclusively with Napalm B. The target was the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division, a veteran unit with approximately 4,000 soldiers and 23 tanks. The attack began at 11:07 a.m. By 11:47 a.m., the entire division had ceased to exist as a combat-effective force. Casualty reports compiled by U.S. Army intelligence after Germany's surrender showed 1,147 German soldiers killed, 1,200 wounded, 953 captured. All 23 tanks destroyed, all 47 half-tracks destroyed. All 89 support vehicles destroyed. The division's commander, SS Brigade Führer Wilhelm Bittrich, survived. He was captured by American forces on March 29th. During his interrogation, he made a statement that was classified until 1992. The statement read, "I have fought on the Eastern Front against Soviet forces. I have seen massed artillery barrages. I have experienced Katyusha rocket attacks. Nothing compares to American napalm delivered by the Jug aircraft. It is not a weapon of war. It is a weapon of annihilation. There is no tactic to counter it. No defensive position survives it. The soldier has no chance. This is not combat. This is execution by fire." Bittrich's statement was shared among German generals still in command. Its effect was devastating. Morale at the senior command level collapsed. On April 2, 1945, General Feldmarschall Albert Kesselring, Supreme Commander of German forces in the West, sent a secret communiqué to Hitler's headquarters. The communiqué, discovered in captured German archives in 1947, contained this paragraph. "American tactical air power, equipped with incendiary weapons, has achieved effects previously thought impossible. Our armored forces are unable to maneuver in daylight. Our infantry positions are defenseless against napalm strikes. Casualty rates in units subjected to the Jug napalm attacks exceeds 70% within the first hour of combat. This level of attrition is unsustainable. I recommend immediate negotiations to end hostilities in the West." Hitler rejected the recommendation. He ordered Kesselring to continue fighting, but the generals on the ground They knew the truth. The war was already over. American industry had won. Let's talk about that industry for a moment, because this is the part that shocks people. Napalm wasn't invented by the military. It was invented by Harvard chemistry professor Louis Fieser. In a laboratory funded by the US government's National Defense Research Committee, Fieser developed the formula in 1942. He tested it in secret facilities in Maryland. The initial tests used a mixture of aluminum naphthenate, aluminum palmitate, and gasoline. It created a sticky gel that burned intensely. The formula worked, but scaling it to mass production required American industrial might. By 1943, Dow Chemical Company was producing the aluminum soap additives. Standard Oil of New Jersey was providing the gasoline base, DuPont was manufacturing the drums, and the U.S. Army Chemical Warfare Service was coordinating distribution. By March 1945, the United States was producing enough napalm to fill 60,000 gallons per day. That's enough to equip 400 The Jug sorties daily, and the production rate was still increasing. By comparison, Germany's entire synthetic fuel production in March 1945 was estimated at 30,000 gallons per day. For all military purposes, America was producing twice that amount, just in napalm. The economic disparity was crushing. But it wasn't just production volume, it was the logistics. This is what amazed German generals like Schmidt when they studied captured American operations orders after the war. The United States didn't just produce napalm, they transported it across the Atlantic Ocean. They stored it at forward airfields. They loaded it onto the Jug in 150-gallon tanks. They coordinated airstrikes with ground forces using radio communications. They conducted bomb damage assessments. They reloaded and launched follow-up strikes within 30 minutes. The entire system operated like a machine. Schmidt later wrote in his post-war memoir, published in 1953 in West Germany. The American military was not an army. It was a factory that produced victory. Every component was designed for efficiency. Every soldier understood his role in the production process. They did not fight with passion. They fought with system, and the system was perfect. We could not compete with perfection. Schmidt's resignation was accepted by the German High Command on March 29, 1945. He was relieved of duty and assigned to reserve status. He was not court-martialed. By late March, too many generals were resigning. Courts-martial would have publicized the collapse of command morale. Berlin chose silence instead. Schmidt sat out the remainder of the war at his family estate in Bavaria. He survived. On May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered. Schmidt was interrogated by American intelligence officers in June 1945. The interrogation report, declassified in 1975, contains this exchange. American officer, General Schmidt, you commanded a panzer division for 3 years. You fought at Stalingrad, Kursk, and the Rhine. Which battle was the worst? Schmidt. None of those were battles. A battle requires two sides capable of fighting. What I experienced at the Rhine on March 23, 1945, was not a battle. It was an industrial process. Your P-47 aircraft and napalm weapons demonstrated that conventional warfare had ended. I resigned because I understood the future. My resignation was not cowardice, it was honesty. American officer, what do you mean by honesty? Schmidt. I refused to lie to my men. If I had accepted the command and ordered them to attack, I would have been telling them they could win. They could not win. Your industrial superiority made victory impossible. Sending them to die for an impossible objective is not leadership. It is murder. I chose honesty. I told Berlin the truth. The war was over. America had already won. And that interview has stayed with me since I first read it in the National Archives, because Schmidt was right. By March 1945, American industrial and technological superiority had rendered conventional warfare obsolete. The P-47 Thunderbolt was just one example. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States produced 15,636 P-47 Thunderbolts. Germany produced approximately 1,400 fighters per month at peak production in 1944. America was producing over 3,000 fighters per month. And it wasn't just quantity, it was quality. The P-47 had an operational range of 800 miles, with drop tanks extending it to 1,800 miles. German fighters averaged 400 miles. The P-47 could carry 2,500 pounds of bombs. Most German fighters couldn't carry bombs at all. The P-47 had 850 caliber machine guns. German fighters had two 20mm cannons and two 7.92mm machine guns. And now, the P-47 had napalm, a weapon so effective that German generals preferred to end their careers rather than fight against it. You just discovered the classified truth about how American air power broke the German High Command's will to fight. These aren't dusty archive statistics. These are real stories about the men who faced impossible odds and made the hardest decision of their lives. Men like General Schmidt, who chose honesty over blind obedience. This history was buried in classified files for decades. Corporate documentaries won't tell these stories. They don't preserve the complexity of war, the moments when career officers chose integrity over orders. If this story matters to you, if preserving the full truth about the greatest generation matters, YouTube's super thanks, the gold heart below, directly supports access to more declassified documents, more veteran interviews, before we lose them forever. Each super thanks helps me spend weeks in archives instead of chasing clickbait. It's about honoring the complete history, not just the victories, but the decisions that made victory possible. You're not just a viewer, you're a keeper of history. You're preserving the stories that textbooks simplify, but there's more to this story. Because Schmidt wasn't the only general who understood the mathematics of defeat. After the war, American military historians interviewed dozens of captured German generals. Many of them echoed Schmidt's analysis. General Gerd von Rundstedt, who commanded German forces in the West before being replaced, told his American interrogators, "The P-47 with napalm was the weapon that convinced me Germany had lost, not because of casualties, because of what it represented. America could invent a new weapon, mass-produce it, train pilots to use it, and deploy it across an ocean in less time than Germany needed to repair a bombed factory. That level of industrial coordination is impossible to defeat with courage or tactics." General Heinz Guderian, the architect of the German Blitzkrieg strategy, wrote in his post-war memoir, Panzer Leader, "I designed German armored doctrine around speed and shock. The P-47 Thunderbolt rendered both obsolete. Speed is meaningless when the enemy owns the sky. Shock is impossible when napalm can destroy an entire panzer division in minutes. American air power did not just defeat our tactics, it invalidated our entire theory of war." These statements reveal something profound. The German generals who resigned or requested relief in March and April 1945 were not weak. They were realists. They understood that the nature of warfare had fundamentally changed. Industrial capacity now determined military outcomes more than battlefield tactics, and America's industrial capacity was unmatched. Consider these numbers. In 1944, the United States produced 96,318 aircraft. Germany produced 39,807. The United States produced 17,565 tanks. Germany produced 9,161. The United States produced 257,000 artillery pieces, Germany produced 41,000, and the United States did this while also supplying Britain, the Soviet Union, and Free French forces under the Lend-Lease program. American factories were producing enough weapons to equip multiple armies simultaneously. German factories struggled to equip their own forces. This disparity was visible to every German general by March 1945. Schmidt saw it when 12 P-47s destroyed his division. Bittrich saw it when 84 P-47s annihilated his SS division. Kesselring saw it when he calculated that American tactical air forces could launch more sorties in one day than the entire Luftwaffe could fly in a week. The mathematics were brutal, and the math didn't lie. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. The American soldiers and factory workers who produced this overwhelming superiority were ordinary people. The P-47 Thunderbolts, the Jugs, were built at Republic Aviation factories in Farmingdale, New York, and Evansville, Indiana. Many of the workers were women. Rosie the Riveter wasn't propaganda. She was real. Her name was Rose Will Monroe, and she assembled P-47 fuselages at the Willow Run plant in Michigan. Or, her name was actually thousands of names. Margaret Sullivan from Burbank, California, Patricia McCarthy from Buffalo, New York, Dorothy Hughes from Detroit, Michigan. These women, many of them working 60-hour weeks, built the aircraft that German generals feared more than Soviet artillery. They built them so well that P-47s had a mission-capable rate of over 70%, meaning 70% of P-47s were ready for combat at any given time. German fighters averaged 40% mission-capable rates by 1945. American quality control was better than German engineering. This fact stunned German technical experts. The napalm itself was produced by chemists and factory workers who never set foot on a battlefield. Louis Fieser, the Harvard professor who invented napalm, continued teaching chemistry classes while also developing incendiary weapons. The aluminum soap manufacturers didn't even know what their product would be used for. They just knew the government had placed orders for thousands of tons. Security was maintained through compartmentalization. Each person did their job. The system worked, and the result was a weapon that ended the careers of German generals. This is the power of American industrial democracy, not dictatorship, not central planning, distributed production coordinated through standardized systems. It was the most effective war-making machine in human history, and it was designed, built, and operated by your grandparents. Schmidt lived until 1967. He never returned to military service. After the war, he worked as a technical consultant for the West German government, helping to rebuild the Bundeswehr, the new German armed forces. He wrote his memoir in 1953. In it, he dedicated a chapter to the events of March 23, 1945. He titled the chapter, "The Day I Chose Truth." In that chapter, he wrote this passage: "I have been asked many times why I resigned my command. People assume it was fear. It was not fear. It was respect. Respect for the lives of my soldiers. Respect for the truth that no amount of courage could overcome American industrial superiority. Respect for the fact that leadership requires honesty, not blind obedience. I could not order men to die for a cause I knew was lost, so I resigned. Some call that cowardice. I call it the last honorable decision I made in the war." Schmidt died in Munich on November 12, 1967. He was 76 years old. His obituary in the Süddeutsche Zeitung called him one of the last Prussian generals who valued honor over ideology. The obituary mentioned his service in 2 world wars, but it did not mention March 23, 1945. That day remained classified in German military archives until 1983. Even in death, the shame of resignation was too painful to acknowledge publicly. But there's no shame in Schmidt's decision. There's wisdom. He saw the future of warfare. He understood that technology and production capacity would dominate battlefields more than tactics or courage. He was right. Modern warfare is exactly what Schmidt predicted. Industrial capacity determines outcomes. The Gulf War in 1991 proved it. American air power destroyed Iraqi forces before ground troops even engaged. The Kosovo War in 1999 proved it. NATO airstrikes forced Serbian capitulation without a land invasion. The Iraq War in 2003 proved it. Baghdad fell in 21 days because American air supremacy made conventional defense impossible. Schmidt understood this in 1945. He just understood it 50 years ahead of everyone else. And he chose to resign rather than send men to die in a battle that industrial mathematics had already decided. That's not cowardice, that's leadership. Your grandparents built the P-47 Thunderbolts that made Schmidt resign. They mixed the napalm, they loaded the bombs, they flew the missions. They did it without knowing the full impact of their work. They just did their jobs, and their jobs changed history. That's the generation we're honoring here. Not just the soldiers, the factory workers, the chemists, the engineers, the logistics officers, the mechanics, the people who made the system work, the people who turned American industrial might into German generals resigning in despair. That's the greatest generation. Not because they were fearless, because they were effective. The arsenal of democracy in action. Never forget who built it. Never forget what they achieved, which scared you more. The P-47's 8 machine guns and 2,500 pounds of bombs, or the fact that America produced 15,000 of them while also supplying allies across the globe. Drop your answer below. My viewers have shared incredible family stories. Grandfathers who built P-47s at Republic Aviation. Grandmothers who mixed napalm at chemical plants. Great-uncles who flew Thunderbolts over Germany. Share your family's connection to this history. Each comment, each shared memory preserves a piece of the greatest generation's legacy. Let's work together. Let's make absolutely sure that their complete story and their whole story survives us all. We owe them that much.